Welcome. This is the public forum for the 2022-2023 General Fund and Special Revenue Budgets. As notes of this meeting, the meeting has been noticed for 2 hours from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. We will be ending sharply at 6:30 p.m. For the process for tonight's meeting will be the following: a presentation from staff, public comment, and the public will have 3 minutes each to comment. And then following that, board comments and questions. The general counsel will provide a 15-minute warning ahead of the end of the meeting. And with this, the way this is set up, I would propose that we allow staff to go through their entire presentation, and then we hold questions to the end. With that, Dr. Narcisse, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Board Member Gode. As you know, we will be presenting the general budget as well as all of the budget items that we have. So I will call up our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Kelly Lopez, to begin the presentation. As many of you know, we have focused our resources in trying to improve not only providing resources to schools, but also to ensure that we are connecting to provide opportunity for kids, provide access, and also to increase opportunities for children within our pipeline. Ms. Lopez, you have the floor.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. I am pleased to present this balanced budget for the 22-23 fiscal year. The proposed 22-23 general fund budget includes staff recommendations for revenues and expenditures, revenue projections based on revised 2021-2022 budget approved in May of 2022, and a public hearing is required by budget law and proper advertisement was provided in the Advocate. The financial summary for the general fund includes total revenues of $517.5 million. Total expenditures of $515.5 million, a final balance of $2 million, and an ending fund balance of $54.6 million. The district has worked diligently to maintain a positive balance in the past several years. We are strategically using our dollars and additional funding, and as a result, we will have a positive balance of over $2 million for the fiscal year. The superintendent and the finance department are committed to bringing a balanced budget to you each and every year. This chart shows the relationship between student enrollment and general fund staffing. The district is strategically placing staff in appropriate funding sources. As a result, the district will continue to build their reserve in the general fund. The projected unassigned fund balance at the end of the fiscal year will be $54.6 million. Unassigned fund balance is the fund balance that the district can use at its discretion. Projected assigned fund balance at the end of the fiscal year will be $29.7 million, inclusive of inventory cost. Assigned fund balance is the funding that must be used for a specific purpose. The total projected fund balance as of 6/30/2023 is $84.2 million. As a percentage of general fund revenues, it is projected to be 16%. LDOE requires a 7.5% fund balance. The district's goal is 15%. By reaching this goal, we can ensure that the district is financially stable and our fund balance is healthy. The next slides will provide you information regarding our projected revenues for next fiscal year. Revenue is projected to increase by $7 million. Ad valorem tax collections are projected to increase by 5% or $11 million. The vast majority is due to the roll forward approved by this board in March of 2022. Sales tax collections are projected to decrease by 14% or $13.8 million. The district will follow the lead of the city parish government and the recommendations of Dr. James Richardson in assuming a 3% increase of 2019 sales tax collections. While this is a conservative approach, it will protect the district in the long run by ensuring that there is not a financial cliff in the middle of the year. Other local revenues will remain mostly unchanged, with a slight increase in administrative fees from charter schools due to growth, and an increase in the extended day program used throughout the district. MFP is projected to increase by $7.2 million. Majority of this increase is due to the state raise approved by the legislature. Federal revenues will increase by $2 million, with an additional year of ESSER funding in comparison to the revised 2021-2022 budget. ESSER funding is providing a unique opportunity for the district. It will allow the strategic plan to dictate the movement of the budget and the general fund for all students and staff. It will allow the opportunity to increase the district's fund balance to ensure that we can build a reserve for later years. The next slides will provide you information regarding our projected expenditures for the next fiscal year at both the school and district levels. A reduction of $1.6 million in prior year encumbrances is included. Regular education will decrease by $1 million, inclusive of streamlining staff by using student enrollment projections. Magnet education will increase by $2.2 million through the growth of the Montessori program, the opening of 2 focused choice schools, and the growth of the Mandarin program. Special education will decrease by $1.8 million as staffing is being appropriately aligned with student needs as well as enrollment. Other instructional programs will increase by $3 million. This is inclusive of the Fine Arts Department funding, athletic department programs, and the growth of the ROTC program in the district. This also includes additional TOR positions for schools based upon student enrollment. Special programs will increase by $2.8 million by including 40 ESL teachers placed strategically throughout the district to assist with those students that have English as their second language. Vocational programs will increase by $1.5 million as the Pathways to a Bright Futures program continues to grow throughout the district to our 9th grade cohorts. Pupil support services will decrease by $4.6 million as the district realigns both staffing and student services to align to the strategic plan. Instructional staff services will decrease by $0.7 million, and general administration will increase by $0.4 million. The majority of this increase is due to election fees being added to the budget for the property tax election upcoming in the fiscal year and increased property tax collections. Operations and plant services will increase by $1.1 million. Along with the continued increase in both electricity and natural gas, the district has increased repairs due to aging facilities, and energy management will become centralized at the district level. Security will decrease by $0.2 million. The district will begin hiring 26 full-time SROs for the district, and this will ensure the safety of all of our students and staff. Transportation will decrease by $1.8 million. The DERA funding will continue to fund 26% of bus purchases. While fuel costs will remain higher than usual, ESSER funding will be used to purchase the new routing and tracking software for the district's transportation department. Central services will decrease by $0.9 million. This is inclusive of the accountability, public information, human resources, and information technology departments. Other use of funds will increase by $15.4 million for the continued growth of charters in the district. The next 2 slides are a summary of the special revenue book that is available on board docs and is also available in the general fund budget book on pages 221 and 222. The district has several opportunities that it has and can take advantage of. The rolling forward of the millage will be a $9 million boost to the district in January of 2023. The review of land sales and school consolidation in the district continues to be an opportunity. The Pathways for Bright Future program is allowing the streamlining of instructional programs at the high school level. Program evaluation continues throughout the district to align the programs with the district's strategic goals and KPIs approved by the board. We will continue to shift our priority areas around literacy and numeracy. Comprehensive Staffing Program has assisted the district in properly staffing all locations based upon the enrollment and needs of each individual student population.
For those who just arrived, we said it would start it in the meeting at 4:30. And what we're doing is running through the presentations, and then we're going to let the public speak, and then we'll come back to the board after the public has spoken. We just finished the general fund budget and the special revenue budgets, and I guess next up would be Dr. Bethley with the review of the ESSER funding. And then after that, we'll go to the public for comments, and then we'll come back to the board for comments from the board.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm going to basically identify some terms that you will hear throughout the presentation. When I refer to allocation, the allocation it means the entire amount of the funding that's designated to the entire grant or to an individual category. The term encumbered means the amount set aside for spending a specific item, but it is not yet a paid expense. The expended means that the money has been spent or paid for an item. Indirect costs is the expenses that the awardee needs for support of the general operation of the budget. And our State Department has populated the indirect costs already into the grant as 26.7433%. In the business world, the indirect costs and administrative costs is basically the same, but for our world, the administrative costs is designated to the Office of Federal Programs for the general operation of the grant. The first budget I will present to you is the ESSER 2 Action 1, and the award period for this grant is 1/5/21 through 9/30/2023. This grant has allowed us the opportunity to promote early childhood initiatives, to have additional pre-K classes, also delivery classrooms, and to also have literacy coaches and additional paraprofessionals. This grant also awarded us the opportunity to purchase materials and supplies for all of our schools. And as you can see, the allocation was $6.6 million, and now we have a balance of an estimate of $490. In the individual support category, the grant allowed us to promote our literacy initiative, where we had 7 district-wide literacy coaches and some school-wide literacy coaches as well. And we were also able to offer tutoring in our comprehensive support schools. This grant also allowed us to have 504 personnel for last school year, and we will allocate funds for this school year. It also allowed us to have social workers for last school year, and we will add 4 social workers for this school year. We will also have medical assistants, and we will have the 2 contracts, Rethink and Castle. We have a balance of $37,000 for the child nutrition program, and for the sanitation and training supplies, we have a balance of $14,000. We have a balance of $700 for our student devices, where we were fortunate to buy all of our kids Chromebooks and have replacement Chromebooks as well. As you can see, the charter schools received their portion, the $1.9 million. So the total direct cost was estimate of $26 million. Our indirect cost was $6.5 million, and our administrative costs was $125. So ESSER 3 Action 1, the award time for this grant was March 2021 through September 30th, 2024. This grant allowed us the opportunity to provide additional instructional days and PD days for our students and staff. And at current, we have an estimate balance of $900. This grant also provided us the opportunity to have evidence-based activities, which this was a part of ESSER 3. The grant was mandated that we spend on these interventions. And we had, in this grant, we included a math supervisor, the 19 math coaches. We have a growing population of EL students. So this grant awarded us the opportunity to hire 69 ESL instructional specialists. And then we hired additional teachers, and we have a variety of contracts that you can see on this slide. ESSER 3 Action 1 allowed us to allocate funding for HVAC. And another opportunity was with all of our guidance counselors. School counselors had the opportunity to work an additional month to provide counseling and support services to our students. We were also able to hire social emotional support employees. We entered into a contract with Castle Foundation and Rethink. And so the balance for this category is estimate 400,000. So the charter schools received their allocation. You see the direct costs, indirect costs, and administrative costs. So our next grant is ESSER 2 Action 2. And this grant, basically the award period is the same as ESSER 2 Action 1, but most of these funds have not been expended. And so this grant will take care of the initiatives for this school year. So we allocated funding for early childhood, pretty much the same items. We have $6 million allocated for materials and supplies for all of our students. We have a special license program that we're going to provide for our English learners, which is $250,000. And then for our literacy initiative, we have allocated $4.9 million. All of our schools this year will have a literacy coach. So part of ESSER 2 will be funding the salary of the literacy coaches. We allocated $2.7 for our other subgroups. The district also is responsible for providing education for our neglect and delinquent students. So we have allocated $2.7 million for instruction and technology. Professional development and workforce. We have contracts, and we also have allocated funding for travel. And we have a new program, the Para to Teacher Pathway, which we will pay for stipends and also tuition. These are paraprofessionals that are en route to becoming teachers. We have allocated $2 million for sanitation and training supplies, and we have allocated $2.4 million for Chromebook devices, licenses, and webcams, and smart boards. Here again, the charter schools will get their allocation, and you can see the direct costs, indirect costs, and the administrative costs. ESSER 3 Action 2, the award period is March 24th, 2021 through September 30th, 2024. In this budget, we have allocated $3 million for tutoring services and for our elementary enrichment program. For our individual student support category, we have allocated funds for 49 math coaches, which this school year, all of our schools will have a math coach, a math supervisor, teachers, art teachers, we have curriculum supervisors, and content trainers. And we also will pay for Edgenuity and Alumni. In our core subject category, we allocated funds for Achieve 3000, which for the 21-22 school year, ESSER 3 Action 2 was the funding source, and we will be the funding source for the 23-24 school year. And you can also see the list of other vendors that we will provide funding for, and this total allocation will be $35 million. The next category, we are going to have 14 ESL instructional specialists for the 2022-23 school year, and that allocation is $1.4 million. For our information and assistance to parents category, we allocated funds for 1 project manager for 2 years, 14 parental involvement district-wide employees for this school year, and 25 parent involvement paraprofessionals for all of our middle and high schools for this school year. For professional development, we allocated $5.9 million, and you can see the list of contracts that we have allocated to this category. For social, emotional, and mental health, we have $1.3 million allocated for a director, for a lead social worker and supervisor, for 7 emotional learning specialists. And in this particular grant, we funded City Year and Manners of the Heart, which was one of our vendors for the last school year. For our students with disabilities, we are allocating $304,000 for 3504 facilitators. We are also allocating $9.7 million for student devices and student connectivity. And you can see we are allocating money for touch boards, technology materials and supplies. For the school info app, we paid that last school year. And for the other subgroup, which is homeless and foster care, we allocated $390,000 for an online software program for instructional materials and supplies and technology. We have money allocated for the consultant, the SSA consultant, and we allocated money, $1.2 million for our transportation software. So as you can see, the charter schools was allocated $4.8 million. And then you see again, direct costs, indirect costs, and administrative costs. So this is our largest grant that we have in ESSER. The next grant is the ESSER 2 incentive. Its award time is January 5th, 2021 through September 30th, 2023. And this grant is specific to the guidance from the State Department, where we have to plan and use their vendors. So in this grant, you can see the categories that are allowed and that you can see the product and the allocation. For core subject, we're spending $40,000 for Eureka Math. And for high school supports, you see the allocation. For our IGP plans. Also, this grant allows us additional money for pre-K, which is $2.4 million. This grant also allows us to expand our learning time. And so we're spending money on teachers and bus operators for after-school remediation. Also for paraprofessional for instructional support, and for professional development, this grant is allowing us the opportunity to pay stipends. And we have a contract for a social worker and for mental and health counseling. And also it allows us to purchase devices. ESSER 2 School Choice is the next grant. You can see the time award for it. This particular grant is for the schools that you see listed: Basis, Primary, Mid-City, Helix Legal, Helix Aviation, and IDA University Prep. This grant totals $711,000, and this grant also flows through the Office of Federal Programs. The next grant is the ESSER 3 incentive. You also see the award time for this grant. This grant is allowing us the opportunity to offer support to all of our 9th grade students at every school, where we will engage in a contract with the Center for High School Success, and they will be helping us with our 9th grade academy, also with ACT Now and Prep ACT. We also have money allocated for professional development for the Literacy Foundation. And we have money allocated for summer learning, which we will pay for materials and supplies and bus operators. And we have a contract that we're going to engage in with Boys and Girls Club. A continuation of the grant, ESSER 3 incentive, we have allocated $946,000 for our Reimagine grant. This services our three schools, Baton Rouge Visual and Performing Arts, Baton Rouge Flame, and hopefully Capitol High. This grant will allow for professional development to our schools to support their innovative programs. We also allocated money for social and emotional and mental health. And the last item for certification for workforce, we have a shortage of ESL and special education teachers. So this grant is awarding us the opportunity to pay tuition and praxis reimbursement for these two areas. Again, you see our $3.3 million is the direct costs, and then you see the indirect costs for this grant as well. We have the next grant is our Homeless ARP2 grant. You see the award time. This grant totals $556,000, and it is allowing us to fund 2 homeless ambassadors, part-time parent instructors, and provide extended instructional support for our students that are identified as homeless. We also have money identified for short-term housing and also to purchase school supplies and personal hygiene needs. The next grant is the IDEA 611 ARP grant. This grant flows through our exceptional service department. The grant total is $2.7 million. Again, this grant is specific, and we must spend this grant on the items designated by the State Department, and part of this grant has to be allocated to our non-public schools. And the last grant of ESSER is the IDEA 619. The total of this grant is $229,000, and it is also to provide extended learning time, compensatory education, and we also have to allocate money for our non-public schools.
All right, so that is our presentation. We will now move to public comments. Each public comment we will have for the public to provide 3 minutes. And then after the public provides the 3 minutes of comment per person, we will then go to the board, and the board will then provide comments and questions. So we'll begin that process for public comments with the public. We want to just provide the public that we are at the public comment stage. The public will have an opportunity, anyone who'd like to come up and speak. We'll have 3 minutes to talk about the budget, and then after that, we will then go back to the board that will have board questions and comments. All right, we have no questions from the public. All right, we'll now go to the board, and the board will have a discussion on any questions and comments. Board members? Mr. Godin?
Thank you, Dr. Narcisse. A couple of quick questions I had on the general fund. Ms. Lopez? First of all, I want to congratulate both of you. I greatly appreciate having names and dates and page numbers on the presentation. So thank you very much. You don't know how much easier that makes it on us. My first question is on the special education and the staffing. In your thing, it said that the special ed staffing was decreased. I assumed it was decreased in here, but increased in ESSER, or how did that work out?
Several different reasons. There may have been a difference in class sizes. There may have been difference in the enrollment population. They may have changed to different funding sources. There are lots of different reasons.
Okay, so
for
you
it.
can't look just at that one number and say.
No, and also it is also inclusive of all of your special education and of all your gifted, which is also included in special education. So it's a large population.
Okay. And so, Dr. Narcisse, just to make sure everyone understands, even though that line shows that kind of thing, with all the other funding sources and other people coming in, we're actually increasing our services to the special education department, not decreasing them as if you look at just that one line.
That is correct.
Okay. Second question was, you mentioned in here the change in funding to charters, but could you give us what percent of our general fund revenue, or what percent of our, I guess our general fund revenue, because a tax plan flows through that. What percent of our general fund revenue will be going to charter schools this year?
I would have to look that up for you, sir. It's about 126 million, I believe. I would have to check. I don't have it with me right now. But the majority of the increases for the 15.4 is type 2s and type 5s they increase slightly, type 5s decrease slightly. It's the growth of the type 1s, they're growing grades. So we knew this going in.
Right. So,
But I can get you that number.
so our total general fund revenue is,
517 million this year. 517.5.
so it's about 125,000.
Yes.
So basically we're pushing 25% kind of number. It's a little bit less than that.
Ballparking,
And
yes.
22% into charters, and that's going to continue to grow probably up to about 30% on the trajectory we're on now.
Yes, sir. And then 23, 24, we have Great Hearts coming. So that'll be
Okay.
an additional charter. But again, we have several coming up for renewal. So
Okay.
that is at the discretion of the board what you choose to do.
Understand. And then my last question, one of the things that caught my eye in here was the activity fees. And, one of the things that people have been asking about continually is how the use of student fees at all of the schools. And so I'm not proposing to change the budget, but I did see in here that we had I see it right here, the funding, activity fee funding, we have a beginning balance of 7.8 million. And then we're projecting a surplus of 1.366 million this year. I would just ask, like, going forward, we look and see, particularly at the elementary school level, what can we do to reduce the school activity fees?
Okay.
Particularly since we have a surplus in that category.
Sure.
Because I know that these school activity fees, for many families, it's no big deal. But for many other families, it is a big deal, particularly if you have 2, 3 children. And so I would really like to see what we could do to reduce. I know we have limits in our policy as to what's the most they can charge, but I would like to see us trying to figure out in the future what we can do to help bring down those fees. I know Dr. Narcisse has started a program for the graduation fees and things to be coalesced under the district, where we're renting facilities as a district instead of as each individual school, and doing some things to reduce the graduation costs. I think this year we might have had no graduation costs, I'm not sure. But I would just like to see us, particularly at elementary school levels, if we could start reducing the need. Because I know there's teachers in the audience, and I know they get funds and things from those fees, and some schools are buying paper and things like that.
Sure.
But I would really like to see what we could do to reduce the need to have parents pay extra to come into the public schools.
I can
That-
work with staff on that one.
That's my only comments. Thank you very much.
Board Member Ware Jackson?
Thank you, Dr. Narcisse. I'm wondering about the funds that expire in September 2024, the ESSER funds that are covering staff positions, some ninth grade academies, other programs. And I'm wondering what the plan is to sustain those salaries and programs beyond ESSER. What's our plan to continue those programs beyond ESSER?
Yes, Ms. Lopez, you want me to answer? Yeah.
It's totally up to you, sir.
So, Board Member Jackson, our goal as we do every year is we review our budget on the programs that we are doing, and programs that we're not doing, we eliminate, make sure that we bring a balanced budget to the board. We don't keep programs that are not effective, so we do an evaluation of those programs by area, and then we go ahead and make adjustments accordingly.
What programs have we eliminated in the recent past? You say we evaluate and eliminate programs that are not effective.
We can get you a copy of what are the programs that we've reduced. We've made adjustments in staffing, and we also reviewed different programs and stuff. We can get you a list of that.
Can you name any today?
Ms. Lopez, do you have any list that you could provide to Board Member Jackson?
Not today, sir. The vast majority of the general fund is based on staffing. So, as you know, general fund is 75-80% staff and salaries. The vast majority of programs come from different funding sources, whether it be from title funding or items like that, and it's at the discretion of the chief academic officer how we use those funds. As far as the general fund, we typically do not. We provide textbooks, we provide library books, but the vast majority of your general fund is not programming, it's people.
Right. That's why I'm asking around the staff questions that are, the staff members that are tied to the general fund. Well, that's ongoing, but there are several positions in the ESSER budget that are staff positions, and I know we're hiring now for some of those positions. So I don't think we have a really strong track record of eliminating programs. I don't know of any right off the top of my head that we've eliminated. So what are we going to do at the end of September 2024 when those positions are still in place and those employees are looking to keep working? Do they know that?
Yes, so yes, we've notified everyone that is on that ESSER budget. We have a process that we do to notify them that these are grant positions, and those positions can be eliminated after the completion of the grant. As you know, Board Member Jackson, most of the budget consists of people, and people worked with the programs to work for students, and so what our reductions will be is to always ensure that when we use our staffing model or any of those components to help make sure that we have a reduction to bring a balance to the board. And more importantly, on our end is to always ensure that we are aligning the organization in a way to get to the KPIs and strategic plan that the board adopted to make sure we're effective in moving the performance for students.
So if these programs are successful, and I don't think we would be starting them if we didn't think that they would be successful, where will we get the money to pay for those positions?
Well, again, our goal all the time is to bring you a balanced budget. And so a part of the process that we go through is we provide a staffing model to the schools. We list all of the programs specifically that are connected to what our goals are, and then we begin to kind of work through it in that way. And then principals get to choose who in their building, what staff that they need to help achieve those goals that are the markers that the board adopted for the KPIs for performance.
Okay, from what you're saying and what you're not saying, I can only assume that what you mean is that those positions will be eliminated, or those programs or whatever we start right now that's tied to ESSER will likely be eliminated or discontinued at the end of 2023. It's September 2024 is when the funding ends.
Yes,
Would that be-
when we were given the ESSER funds, it was to catch children up, provide interventions, supports. Each of the core actions had targeted plans that we had to do to help improve student performance. So once the funds are gone, we'll adjust accordingly to continue to help support kids in that way, but bring the board a balanced budget in that way. Our work is to ensure that principals and schools have the opportunity to work through their staffing model to ensure that they are able to get to the targets when helping students learn and continue progress.
So are all of the positions that are tied to ESSER strictly for catching kids up?
There's variations of stuff as Dr. Bethley shared in the ESSER funds that we've used ESSER for. The State Department provided us with multiple ways to use ESSER funds to help support the district and students. But the key for everything that we do is to help drive student performance and support them to catch them up where they are. Even though each core action states something specifically, the rules to use those funds.
So the positions that are not tied to catching kids up, are those positions normally in the general fund?
There's a variations of positions that could be in the general fund. As you know, each department uses funds in different ways to move towards goals that the board has adopted and set. And so it just depends on what the goal of that department is to move the KPI that needs to be moved, that's been adopted by the board in the strategic plan. It's not as cut and dry. I know it's more complex than that, but as when we worked on a strategic plan for an entire year, the board adopted us to be able to improve things such as math, ELA, social emotional support, those things. And so we've worked to organize the budget in a way to prioritize those areas, which means areas that we did not prioritize, we reduced. That could have been through staffing, that could have been through variations of ways. But our goal has been to ensure that we can provide a balanced budget to move the goals that the board adopted and set in the KPIs and strategic plan.
Is there a sustainability plan in place?
Yes, so the goals for ESSER funds sunset in 2024. When we talk about sustainability, by the time that the funds are down, our goal is to continue in the areas that the board has set that have provided us with KPIs to improve, such as if you look at in our student achievement section or in our customer service or those areas to kind of improve on that. And then what we'll do is we'll reduce to make sure that we bring a balanced budget. So it's not just in terms of remember that the ESSER dollars are additional dollars that were given to us to catch kids up, but then we will right size and balance the budget as we've done for this is our second budget. We brought you a balanced budget with a surplus, but the goal is to continue that it moves the KPIs that the board adopted.
So the board is going to direct you where we're going to, how we're going to sustain these programs or positions?
Well, as we always do, is I provide you a recommendation on the entire budget, and then you tend to decide on the allocation of the budget and then vote on whether that budget's accepted or not. But then our goal is to always make sure that we're moving the marker that the board has adopted around the KPIs and strategic plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've spent a few minutes, but I don't know if my question has really been answered. It sounds like there's not a sustainability plan in place. Is that right?
When you say a sustainability plan, before ESSER funds, the board, as you are aware, had a budget that it approved to continue to make sure that the system functioned. The ESSER fund is not something that we would keep. So once it sunsets, we have to continue to balance the budget and also balance that we are prioritizing the budget to move the KPIs that the board adopted for us to move for children. And so when we say sustainability plan,
How are we going to pay for it? That's what I mean.
well, it's just like we always do, we will make reductions where needed be. And the goal will be to prioritize, as we are doing now, the areas that the board adopted for their KPIs, whether that's in student achievement section that we've had, or customer service area they have in the strategic plan, or our operations and professional development areas.
So do you have an idea of how many millions of dollars we'd be looking at when we're thinking about the staff and programs and even the ninth grade academies that are supported by ESSER funds that we would need to find elsewhere in late 2023 or mid 2024?
Dr. Bethley?
Academy, we will need about $250,000 to.
What about all the, not only the ninth grade academies, but the many programs and staff that are tied to ESSER funds once the funds are expended?
Well, some of the positions we can leverage other funds, like, for example, the social emotional social workers. That's an allowable expense under Title IV. So we can braid other funding sources, Title I and Title IV, to pay for some of the positions. And also Title I can pay for some of the content teachers as well.
Do you have an idea about how many millions of dollars are tied to personnel
That would be
programs under ESSER?
yes, like how many positions, the total that we put in to ESSER. That's what you're asking?
Yeah, how many millions of dollars are tied to people and programs that we would plan to continue beyond September 2024?
Okay, about for personnel, we are looking at about 75 million.
About 75 million?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
75 per year?
For what we have in ESSER now,
So I'm
but
sorry.
some of those
Let
positions.
me make sure I clarify the question I think I'm hearing. Your question is, how many millions of dollars would we have to continue for personnel? And I understand the question that you're asking, but it's not a matter of us continuing those programs. We'd have to bring you a balanced budget. And so we would be making reductions in areas from personnel or any type of reductions to make sure it aligns to what the strategic plan KPIs that we have. What I think has been a little confusing when the question of sustainability is asked is at times the question is thinking because we've made these additions, they're continuous. They're not continuous. Once the budget sunsets, then we make adjustments as well.
So those positions and programs will be eliminated? I keep going back to the same. I feel like I'm going in a circle, but I think Ms. Bethley was on the track of answering my question, giving me some dollars. I'm curious about how many millions of dollars are tied to staff in the ninth grade academies to be able to sustain this beyond September of 2024. Because these, what we're seeing in the ESSER budget looks really good, looks really good programming to keep going. And I would hate to think that all of this would just go away because it's tied to ESSER and we don't have a plan to sustain this beyond 2024 September. Do you have a number? Guesstimate. You don't have to get, I don't need an exact number.
For
75 for the positions, the staffing that's tied to ESSER, the ninth grade academies, I even see pathways is still tied, although we haven't really determined, well, that budget failed for not getting a second, but at any rate, there are several programs and personnel that are tied to ESSER. And what I'm trying to find out is what the plan is to continue. Where are we going to get the money, basically?
Okay, so most of these positions will go back to the general fund. Okay, but we do have funds that it's an allowable expense in Title I and Title IV to pay for some of these positions. Like with Title I, we can pay for literacy coaches and we can pay for math coaches and content teachers that they must be certified. In Title IV, we can pay for the mental health support people and social and emotional people as well. That's allowable under Title IV.
So if much of this is going to go back to general fund, do we have that much of a surplus in general fund that we'll be able to pick this up later on?
As the superintendent had said earlier, the ESSER funds were given to us to catch kids up.
Right.
And so a lot of the initiatives that are in ESSER have to do with interventions. They have to do with professional development. So as we have grown these teachers out, we've caught these students up. Not everything has to continue. And so we will work to get what we need and what is ongoing back into the general fund. But even then, it's just like your own personal budget. You have to make choices of where do you want to keep and what do you not. So at the time when we do the budget, as we always do, we will work with district leadership and we'll determine what are the priorities of both the board and the district and what we will continue on with.
Can you all determine what would normally be in the general fund that's ongoing, that's in ESSER now, so that we can figure out what we'd be looking at a little later? I understand that much of this should be going towards catching kids up, and there are positions specifically where people are specifically hired to do that. But beyond that, there are other positions that and other things that are tied here that we would need to keep going, like the ninth grade academies. They're going to continue, and a lot of other things. So I would just like to see this separated out so we can get an idea of what we'd be looking at come 2024.
Sure. I have to do some calculations. Not a problem.
Thank you. That's my biggest concern.
Sure, no problem.
Board Member Dyson?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One is about the transportation budget. Concerned about the budget being decreased, the numbers of drivers being decreased when we've had extreme situations this year, last current school year. The buses, we just didn't have enough drivers. We didn't have enough trail buses. Children had to be left at school, and it was just, we really ran into some difficult problems. Overloading, sitting on the floor of the bus. We just have had multiple problems.
Sure.
And I'm very concerned about the fact that at the last discussion on this, I heard that what we were going to do is it was going to be because we were going to increase efficiencies in the bus routes. But then I was informed that that program that we're buying to redesign and be able to better efficiently run our routes
Sure.
is not going to be available to us and usable at the start of the school year. And so I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get the efficiencies when we're not going to even have the program yet. And how are we not recruiting bus drivers right now?
So I can only tell you after speaking to the transportation supervisor. As far as recruitment, I would have to defer that to human resources. But as far as the transportation department, we've increased the number of routing specialists from 3 to 4, which is going to make a huge difference. You would think only one, but one additional person, you'd be amazed how much more efficient you can get doing the different routes. We are working with our parents and with our communications department to get the word out. Let us know, do you need a bus? Do you want a bus? And that way we can more efficiently route the students and we know where the buses are going to go. As compared to our revised budget, the number of bus drivers is actually higher than the revised budget had because we had difficulty finding bus drivers. However, we feel with the additional routes, we will not need, 500 bus drivers. We don't have the student population for 500 bus drivers anymore. So we've decreased us slightly. But as you can see, compared to the revised, the proposed is up slightly, and our special ed buses is about the same. But we are working through to route the children so that everyone gets on a bus when they need one.
And I know we're putting an onus on the parents to, we've changed that this year so that the parents have to actually go on and say, we want bus service.
Sure.
But I'm real concerned about the ones that don't do that but do need it.
Right.
So I don't know what we're doing.
I know the communications
I don't want
department.
it to be a debacle in the first
Absolutely.
week of school.
Absolutely. Communications is working diligently with the transportation department. We are also going to be at the back to school bash. We're going to promote this to all of our parents. Every opportunity we have, we are promoting this to our parents to make sure that all of our students have a bus route.
We are also working, Board Member Dyson, with principals to make sure they could identify every child in their building. The executive directors are working with them to make sure that we don't miss anyone. So there's going to be some stipulations in for the start of school as they can identify, and then we can be able to check what the routes are.
I mean, do we have the manpower to reach out and be calling all of these parents to say, are you going to, do you want to opt in or not?
Yeah, so we're working with schools directly, and we're also making sure that we're publicly promoting out. But I think the key for us is to work with the school leaders because they communicate with their populations of students in their schools to make sure we can identify whether a child is going to ride the bus or not.
So maybe we can think about a robocall to each family, but that's not going to be the ones that enroll later. But I think we should be reaching out in every way we can, not just fairs or things that we host, but reaching out to where they are. If that's at all possible, I'd appreciate it. The other thing is in the Grow Our Own, we talked, it was mentioned that we have dollars for the, and it was, I think you were, I think Ms. Bethley was talking about the paras to become teachers.
Yes, ma'am. The Parent to Educator program.
In discussions that I've had and questions that I've asked, and nothing that you said indicated that this is also in, that is growing our own, I was told would also be for growing our own teachers to become the upper level instructors, like through BRCC colleges, through for the APs, for the certified, the industry based.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I don't know where are the dollars for those growing our own of those kinds.
Okay, that is also captured in ESSER 2, Action 2. In ESSER 2, Action 2. The para to teacher program. That's
the para to teacher. But what about the teacher to upper level course?
Okay, so we have another program that's not in ESSER, but we do have that program. Teachers inspiring to become leaders.
Yes.
We have that program that's funded with general fund.
And do we have an increased budget there to encourage so that as many of our own can be teaching these courses that we're going to be encouraging?
That is,
That's inclusive in the recruitment budget.
And we've raised it enough to...
We will see. We will work on the numbers if we need it. If we get an additional teachers who would like to do this, we will work with them. That's not a problem.
And then yesterday I'd had some lengthy conversations because of information that I had requested. And I have not been able to find a follow-up email, but I had asked about the economy of scale. I had asked questions about the fees, tuition fees and textbooks. And I was asking for some amended budget item to reflect
Dual
what we had discussed for dual enrollment, those fees. And I had requested that we go out and make this a true partnership so that we aren't just providing this institution all these students and we're going to be charged the same amount as a single student that goes and enrolls on their own, that we need a partnership rates and that we need economy of scale rates. And have any changes happened in this budget to reflect these negotiations? And
So all of the dual enrollment is currently in the ESSER budget. I know the Chief of Staff and Workforce coordinators were working on that. I would have to defer to the Chief of Staff on that because I know dual enrollment is in her world. I know they are working with BRCC for those different information. There she is.
oh, there she is.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Dyson. Yes, so yesterday we did have a conversation about the questions that you posed in the email, and you did ask that question along with some other data questions that now my team is gathering. We'll have that to you before tomorrow's meeting, but I didn't want to just send one data set without sending you the totality of what you asked for. But in response to your inquiry about us reaching out to our partner to make sure that we're getting a more accommodating rate because of the scale of size of the population they're going to be serving. We're going to be increasing their enrollment by allowing our students to have access to their courses. And what I shared yesterday with you in our meeting was that BRCC has agreed to give us a grant that gives us a reduction of $100 per credit hour for a course. I gave you an example, but you asked me to give you something specific. And so we're looking at the 7 courses that our students have signed up for to give you that rate, and based on that grant and the implementation of that grant, what the cost will be. So we're going to give you the total cost of what the course will be before the grant and what will be after. But any course that is a 3-hour course, if the majority of the courses are, we're looking at a reduction of $300 just for that course.
And we had estimated that the cost was $300 for the course.
Right. So we gave a projection. As I shared with you yesterday, the projection was $300 per course plus $100 for textbooks. Your other question is, well, I know you probably will ask that, is that will be the textbook costs. And I did share with you yesterday that the majority of those courses have online textbooks, so there would not be an additional cost for that. But remember that in our budgeting, we did projections based on the average cost of the courses that our students will be taking. Now that we have specific courses, the data that you're asking for, and then we will provide to you for tomorrow, will give you more specifics about what that adjustment will look like.
And see if we can get it adjusted in our budget for tomorrow, right?
Well, I don't do budget, but what we would find, I don't know. I have to look at the cost, but I'm not thinking that we're going to be far off. Remember, also, we based that projection also on other conditions as well, because we did it at the total number of 9th grade students who we were anticipating to be in that course. Well, we know that based on our numbers now, that some of our 9th grade students are choosing to take AP courses.
Right.
AP courses themselves don't have costs. So we will have a savings there as well,
Right.
but they'll enroll into second semester. And so students can take more than one course in some cases. So even though I'm giving you a course cost now by the number of courses students are enrolled in, we definitely want to reserve that funding to provide additional opportunities for students in semester 2 who may elect to take courses as well.
And Mr. Shamlin, so we're going to ensure that we get this in our MOU with the providers of service teaching.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Our chief of staff has been handling those MOUs, but she sends them, she sends them through me for approval, so we
Okay.
can make sure of that.
All right.
Right.
Well, so yes, if we can get some clearer information for tomorrow and maybe a handout, that would be with these things detailed, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, definitely.
And I want to make sure that we know, I didn't just ask this yesterday, that I sent the email a good, few
Oh.
weeks, and we're trying to now hone in.
Yes. So the questions that you asked in your email that predated yesterday, we did respond to. The data that you're requesting was an extension of that conversation, but we definitely want to make sure we get that information to you.
All right.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate it. Now, the last question that I had was around transparency with our dashboard with these budgets and with both the general fund and ESSER budgets. My feedback that I've been hearing is that it's not detailed enough. I just want to make sure that we're keeping it updated and as detailed as possible with a thorough, so that a lay person can look at it and it's easily understood and transparent. So we just need to keep that. That should be totally up to date.
Yes.
And then again,
work
once
on
we
it.
approve. Okay. Thank you so much.
Board Member Godey?
Thank you. Ms. Lopez, we are going to be, or we are about to purchase, I guess, new software for the system for finance and HR and things. Where is that in the general fund?
It's not in the general
It's not in the fund?
No, there is $1 million that has been set aside in ESSER funding for it. There is also $3 million in assigned funding that we have moved from previous years,
Great, okay.
that we've moved into assigned funding specifically for that. So it can be moved from assigned funding back into the general fund for that use. So a total of $4 million.
Because I just wanted to make sure that we had money not only to buy the software, but also to implement the software
Yes.
in a correct manner.
Yes. So
Okay.
I
I've said that 100 times.
You have, which is why when we had that increase from what we had in revised budget to our actual ending balance in the previous year, we took $3 million and put it in assigned funding specifically for that.
Okay, thank you. Second question, I guess I'm going to go back to the sustainability issue a little bit. Couple of things. One, currently, everybody who has a job that is funded by a grant, isn't that always annual from year to year?
Yes, so they have a letter they sign.
They have a letter they sign, and we notify them of that, and so we go through that. Also, at any one time, how many vacancies do we have within our district within the teaching side? My recollection is somewhere between 150 and 200,
Yes, sir. That's probably a fair estimate.
and we probably have about that kind of number tied up in some of the ESSER grants. So, and we'll always be recruiting teachers and things like that. So I don't want anybody whose job position is being funded by the ESSER grant thinking that they can't take a house loan past 2024 because there won't be a job, because if you're good, there'll be a job. There will
Always need teachers.
we always need teachers. So I just want to make sure that people don't get the impression that we're getting ready to push them off a cliff. Okay.
No.
The next thing is, some of the reading and things I've been doing and some of the conferences I've been to, things like literacy coaches and math coaches are rapidly becoming the norm across the nation, particularly in urban districts. And I know we are doing it to try to catch students up, because I think to have all of this money coming where we didn't put the money into educational aspirations for the students would have been horrible on our part. But things like literacy coaches across the board, even the high perform, one of the things that was a sort of a revelation to me is even the high performing students in literacy still need coaching of how to get better. And we tend to focus just on the lower levels, but we need to also focus not only, it's important to close the gap. We need to bring those up, but we need to also push the higher level people higher. So they can do better across that. So I guess my question for you, Dr. Narcisse, because there's a lot of talk about sustainability, things like literacy coaches and math coaches, we have our metrics that we have in place. We have our goals that we have in line. So when you look at these, I'm just using those as an example. If the literacy coaches and the math coaches seem to be really working, would that be an area where you say, look, this program is really working no matter what, we want to continue funding this, and then we'll look across the board and say, other things may be good, but we have to choose between the best. And so would we be sitting there choosing, going, these things are working, so we can continue this, and we'll have to cut something else? Is that, I mean, right now, you've only been here a year, or I guess a year and 6 months about. And so in this era coming with all the learning loss, no, we haven't cut many programs, but we also haven't had a strategic plan with metrics. We haven't had the evaluation of programs and things like that. So what I'm looking for is down the road, we'll come and have real evaluations of real programs, and then we'll have to make some decisions. And some of those decisions may be to not continue some programs in order to continue other programs, but that's going to be a decision that none of us can say right now what that is going to be.
Yes, that's correct. So as soon as the board came and they adopted in the strategic plan KPIs, we'll have data that will continue to help us drive on seeing how kids perform, and then we can evaluate what positions we keep, what positions we don't keep, and how that's connected to programs.
So anyone with a job funded by a federal grant or any of this stuff should not worry about job security. We got lots of things going on.
That is correct.
And being with the board passed strategic plan, it's not easy for me to say, we have set out goals and targets of where we want to be, and we'll be evaluating programs against those targets, and that's how we'll make the funding decisions for 2024, 2025 as we get to that. But right now, we can't say what those are because we don't have the metrics yet to be able to say which ones are doing well and which ones are not. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct. We will have, by the time 2024 comes around, we will have clear patterns of data, and then we can make decisions. I mean, the challenge is, as everybody recall, kids fell behind. They went out of school, so there's a lot of catching up that we're doing right now with ESSER dollars.
Okay. And so as we catch up, maybe some of the things we're doing now, maybe we don't need to continue. And other things we're doing now, we'll see and say those have more benefit than some things we are doing now, so we'll prioritize those. And some of them will say some things we're doing now has more benefit than these new programs, so we won't continue these new programs. But in any case, no one should be worried about a job because we're always going to need teachers.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Collins, Vice President Collins, sorry.
Thank you. All right. So I kind of beg to differ on whether or not we can do a sustainability plan. If we can, and the data is we already had the data. It's odd that 2024 is our year of choice because it's also the year that the money is gone. Could be a coincidence that's when the data magically supposed to come available, but maybe not. Title I and Title IV money, are we just sitting on extra Title I and Title IV money that's going to magically be of use and need by the time this COVID, and I'm generalizing the different buckets of money. So when I say COVID money, so I don't have to keep saying every single category of COVID money. I'm quite sure you know what I mean.
Okay. No, ma'am. We, in addition to receiving the ESSER funds, we also receive Title I, an allocation, and a Title IV. With Title I, we have different set-asides. So at least $10 million was allocated to those set-asides, and $10 million was allocated to our schools.
So when you say set-asides?
Set-asides are programs that are mandated by the state. For example, we have to allocate funds for school choice. We have to allocate funds for our neglect and delinquent students. We have to allocate funds for, we have school choice.
How much? So then that leaves how much discretionary? What's the percentage of discretionary in those buckets of money? Title I, is there any quote unquote discretionary money that is not having to be allocated to those things you just mentioned?
Yes, we have funding for like our comprehensive support schools, like our schools that have a letter grade of D and F. But to answer your question, discretionary, no, ma'am. All of our Title I funds are allocated
Based on needs identified by the federal government, and they giving it to us to spend on BAM.
Yes, ma'am. And
right.
the whole purpose of Title I is to provide the necessary academic supports and materials and supplies for our students that are economically disadvantaged.
Okay. Title IV funds, so that people can be familiar with, because we hear Title I all the time. Title IV funds are usually spent on.
Yes, ma'am. Title IV, we've received Title IV funds the last 3 years. Title IV has 3 categories. It's for well-rounded education, for safe and health, and also for professional development for technology.
Okay. What is the percent of salaries? Isn't there a percentage cap of how much we can spend on salaries for some of these funds? And if so, which ones, and what's the percentage cap on those different buckets of money? For example, because I know there's a bunch of different buckets of money. So in particular, the COVID money, the Title I and Title IV, since those 2 came up.
Okay, there's not a cap
Okay.
on salaries as long as we allocate those salaries in the category that's designated by the state.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, for clarity, then technically 90% of Title I budget could be on staff, salary and benefits, and then 10% on supplies, for example. I'm not saying that's good or bad practice. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
So for Title I, all the Title I budgets have to align with each school's school-wide plan.
Okay.
And when they write their school-wide plan, it's based on the data and the needs of that particular school and their test scores.
Okay.
So the principal has to write the school improvement plan, and from their school-wide plan, then they determine how they're going to allocate their Title I dollars.
Okay, and so then technically, the principal may identify that they need so many interventionists, like they need so many people to provide certain intervention, and I'm using the term intervention generally, not a specific actual intervention title. A principal may say to themselves, I need a lot of intervention, I need some hands-on intervention. 90% of that is salary and benefits for hands-on people, and that would be okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's allowable.
All right, okay. The other question I have is, okay. The other question I have is, when we say, and this really is not online textbooks, I know sometimes they can be cheaper than paper textbooks, but nowadays, since online books are trending, the tendency is not too far behind in cost. And so when we, Chief of Staff Smith, when you get us the information, if it's online textbooks versus paper textbooks, if you could actually put the cost of the online books, because I know, unfortunately, from recent experience, that it's a heavy penny, those online books. And I remember us discussing it here in the board meetings in the past when we were switching to Chromebooks and all that other stuff. Yes, they had access online, but it still was a cost that we had to account for. I would like to see, and I don't know, I was held up and was not able to get here for 4:30, but in the discussion was a request for a sustainability plan provided, was asked already?
I asked what was the is there one?
Okay. Well, I'll send this in an email. I do want to see a sustainability plan that shows how much we've supplanted from the general fund to ESSER. Okay, in our regular reoccurring expenses with salaries and benefits and et cetera, that if this COVID money was never came to us, it would be in the general fund. How much is that? All of it. Every last dash that's in the general fund, which indicates usually that means it's not here because it's in ESSER. Okay? Then how much is that? What happens? What's a sustainability plan for when it runs out? For our regular, long-standing general fund expenses. Then our new regular recurring expenses. And let me define what I mean by regular recurring expenses. We expand programs, we offer something new, math coach, literacy coach. Yes, with any grant, we say, look, when the money run out, that's it. Matter of fact, I'm doing a contract work based on a grant. I'm fully aware the money gonna run out June 30 to 2023. And so they may either have some extra costs left over. Forgive me, I forget the exact term, but carryover. Might be some carryover that's gonna take us from 23 to 24. May not be. We all get that, I think, as board members. That's why we usually approve everything once a year, not multiple years. So that we can take all of those things into account and so that we are thinking through our sustainability, not at the last minute when the money is gone in 2024, but as we go through so we can readjust or something might come up that, wow, we didn't think about. This was a very, very important need. And so while we thought such and such was important at the time that we first got the money, we see a better use of the funds because such and such came up and it feels what's required and all the guidelines and parameters, like all of that amazing stuff. I need to see a sustainability plan. Like once the money is gone and we have the data, we can't, it's just not, we have data. Okay, when the money is gone, I'm gonna label it original recurring expenses, okay, and new recurring expenses. Original recurring expenses, I am defining as our usual course of business. Math teacher, intervention specialist, whatever. Whoever's salary got pulled from the budget, plus whatever other cost, whatever salary benefits is an example, anything. Okay, I'm just learning to repeat myself because I'll make sure people understand what I'm asking for. All right. Anything that was a regular recurring expense that was on this general fund, and we'll go back 9 times out of 10 unless we make some changes. Okay? I need to see that. Then the new recurring expenses. Great ideas that we said, amazing, let's roll with it. And And then how do we intend to correct? It's not sufficient. And it would be irresponsible for us to say, we're going to wait till it's over. We know the cliff coming, and it is a cliff. It's not a ditch, it's a cliff. And so then we have to prepare for the cliff. And that's what I would like to see. And let me look at the rest of my notes and make sure. That's just, okay. I'm gonna save my little comment I had. It wasn't necessary. I can keep it to myself. Okay, are we sitting? I'm just trying to have a little humor instead of it just being me fussing all the time. That's all. So, okay. Okay, I do have one concern. And I'm not picking on literacy and math coaches, but it's an example of a broader concern I have. I think that the concept is great. My concern, though, however, is that at a time where there's a national labor shortage in almost every industry, and we know that it absolutely exists here in EBR, then what are we doing to balance the concept of literacy coaches and the concept of we need actual math and ELA teachers for the literacy coaches to coach? We have vacancies in those subject areas. And so then I'm just raising up the concern and letting you know that I am going to come back at some point, not today, not this week, but I am going to come back with that same question with some more detailed ask behind it. That is all. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President
Oh,
Clark.
I'm sorry, Superintendent. I'm requesting a sustainability report. I'm with the board budget workshop tomorrow. I need to see. 24 hours is probably not enough time for somebody to say, this how we gonna fix it. This what, is a good idea, but let's phase it out. So but tomorrow I need to see the information, okay? Not the analysis and what to do, but just the basic information. How much did we supplant? So the original recurring expenses and the new recurring expenses. And if this COVID money, again, I'm just using a general term because I know everybody got good understanding. Y'all know what I mean. If the COVID money is gone, what we got? Thank you. Tomorrow, sustainability report. I would like to respectfully request something by next week on that. Like, okay, this is where we at. And then next week, this is some nice thought out. This is what we can do. Thank you.
Board Member Ward Jackson.
Board Member Webb Jackson has let me. I just wanted to tell the board and the public, I have to leave. I have grandfather babysitting duties, so I need to leave. So I just want everyone to know why I was leaving. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gode. Thank you, Dr. Narcisse. I want to just go back real quick to a conversation we had yesterday. I usually have a meeting every week with the superintendent, and yesterday was my day. So I had a lot of questions around the staffing model, which I won't go into because we had a long list of things. But during that conversation, you mentioned that many of those positions are now back, or they've been added back, but they're not reflected on board docs in the budget. So what I'd like to request is that, instead of having to work up the budget all over again to adjust that according to the school budgets directly, could there be I'm requesting that we add an addendum that would show us what kind of changes have been made recently so far, because a lot of the questions and concerns that I'm getting from schools is around positions that will no longer be there, and what effects those things are going to have on the whole school climate and the success of the schools next year. So if some of those positions have been added back that are not reflected in the budget that's on board docs, an addendum on board docs with that included would be very helpful. And then specifically, there was one yesterday that I forgot to ask, and it was a real big one. I don't know how I forgot to ask that one, because it's, about the elementary schools in particular, and the clerks in the schools. The clerks are going to be removed, and we're wondering who will fill the roles of all the clerks in the schools, because those are the main line, the first person that people see when they come into the schools, and they have all the information on where to direct everybody. So who's going to fill those kinds of roles in the schools for the clerks?
I get the chief of staff to come up. Just on the staffing model, we've had a list of stuff. Maybe we could pull the. Yes.
Yes. I don't know if they have it, Dr. Narcisse, but I can speak to it. I was just conferring with our chief operating officer for finance. But for the school clerks at the elementary level, you're saying we're going to have a reduction. There will be school-based positions at the elementary level with the clerk position. There wasn't a reduction in that area. I think that the position that you're talking about is the executive secretary position at the school level. That was a position that was not allocated to elementary schools. But all schools will have clerks.
No, I'm getting calls from clerks that are saying that.
Maybe there were some schools had more than one clerk. So maybe those are the clerks that were impacted.
Board Member Ware Jackson, if there's based on the guidelines we provided, we did not do an elimination of clerks, but if there's this particular school that you're hearing something, we can go and verify. There were schools though on the list that had more than one clerk, but a lot of those were choices that school leaders would have to make as we gave them levels of autonomy and requirements in the staffing model.
Like Capital Elementary in particular,
We could take a look at
Yes,
that.
I can't speak off the cuff because I don't have the information in front of me,
Right,
but I definitely will go back and I'll verify that.
Yeah, if you would verify clerks being present are they in all the schools or?
And there was a ratio for clerks, but clerks was a position that was not eliminated from the staffing model. But again, there were some schools that had more than the number of clerks that the ratio would have allowed for, and maybe those are the adjustments that you might be getting information about. But we will review it, and I will get back to you to make sure on that specific school.
Well, I guess add that to the list of the things that we spoke of yesterday that might be back in the schools that we're not aware of, that's not reflected on board docs in the regular, the budgets for the schools. So if we could have an addendum that would identify what we've changed, it would be very, very, very helpful for both the board and the public and the people in the schools in particular.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we want to make sure that we get the rationale of the principal, because the principal had made decisions on choices, right?
Yes.
So if there's a choice that happened, then we can understand what that rationale is, and we can share that with you, Board Member Ware Jackson, so we can understand. We provided guidance in the staffing model, and then school leaders had to choose what positions or things that they wanted to do as they strategize on getting the KPIs.
Okay, and a couple more questions. I just remembered one I wanted to ask you yesterday, Mr. Superintendent, Dr. Narcisse, around the, what is that position? There's a new position called oh, what's the word we like to play with all the time? Equity. The equity, there's an equity supervisor, or let me see what it's called again. An executive director of equity. Was he or she part of the process when reviewing the assignments and making the decisions on, where we have an overage, we have some schools that are overstaffed and some that are understaffed, and we're trying to balance this out. So hence the some of the movements in these schools. And we're noticing that some schools that may need certain things because of the nature of the school, because of some schools may not have the numbers, but they definitely have the need, but that isn't part of the equation. So I'm wondering, what role did the executive director of equity have in producing or making decisions within the staffing model?
The way that the staffing model sheet came together was that we took what the LDOE had, which requires a certain ratio from number of staff to students. And then we looked at what our current numbers are, because our classroom sizes are lower than what the state recommended, and then went through that process accordingly. As a matter of fact, the district always had ratio numbers according to staff to student. The challenge was that it was not implemented across schools. And so when we provide the staffing model to provide quality control across all schools and principals had to make decisions, that's where those numbers landed. But it had nothing to do with the executive director of equity.
So they didn't have any role in
No, that's not how. No, the process that we went through was that once the staffing model was established, because there's been a staffing model actually in the school district for a while, but the challenge has been all schools did not implement it. What we did was we actually met in this room with every single principal on their master schedule. Principals came up with their teams. We reviewed master schedules with them, and then we did the staffing. We looked at staffing, and then also with budget. As you know, every child equals a particular dollar, and then so that was how that process went. And so schools that had more staff than schools that did not have staff, and those things, that's where decisions had to be made.
So how do you balance like a particular school need that may not exactly match a number when you consider staffing that school? And I know you've heard me beat this drum a million times, so beat it again. Capital Middle School, with everything that they've been through in the last few years, and over time, we talked about it in the boardroom that they actually needed like 3 deans to take care of everything that was going on there. And they're not the only ones. I'm sure there's others, lots. There are many others, but I know that one because it's in my backyard. And I can, I feel it a little bit more. So how do we balance out a model that's based on the number of kids in the schools? And we know that a lot of our underperforming schools have lower capacity. So their numbers are not very high. So we can't meet their need based on a model that's basically staffed by numbers. So how do we fill in the gap so that the need for those particular schools and students are covered?
So in the model, as we shared, there is stabilization positions, which are additional positions that schools that may have various additional needs can make requests. There was a process for that, and that's how we provided additional support in that way. So if a school says, an example, we need additional, I don't know,
We need another dean.
yeah, another dean. I know it's a position you like to hear a lot. So if they said whatever the position that they make the request, then we have the discussion with them, and then we provide them that additional space. So that's kind of how the model works. So that allowed for schools who may have not had, who may need the additional support or those things to kind of work in that way.
Okay, and then one last thing. I wanted to remind myself, what is the surplus that we have, or is it, what was it, Miss Lopez? $2 million. I thought that's what it was, $2 million surplus. And if we might have like $75 million worth of positions that we'll need to figure something out with. And then what about the we're looking at doing raises for teachers. I know we talked about that. We're trying to figure out a plan to do that, how we want to increase like 8% in a couple of years, getting up to 12. You know, how if this is just so much money we need, you know? And if you know, how do we sustain and also be able to add that goal of getting our teachers up to par and surpassing the rest of the area? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, our goal all the time is to prioritize. We can't do everything. So as the
Right.
board adopted and said, you know, the focus is to, on the KPI and strategic plan, to improve student performance. Our goal will be to prioritize. So as we look at our priorities, and the goal was to make sure children can read, do math, you know, social emotional support. So as we prioritize those things, other pieces that we have not prioritized will make reductions in those areas to bring a balanced budget. As the board have probably done every year, even before I arrived here, you've always worked to provide a balanced budget.
Absolutely.
You cannot provide everything to everyone, so we'll make decisions on priorities around that, and then kind of work through that on the needs of various schools in that way.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that addendum on board docs, and thank you, Ms. Collins, for giving a little bit more clarity to what I'm asking for when it comes to sustainability, and just giving us an idea of what we're looking at from general fund that's in ESSER and may need to go back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Board Member Dyson?
Thank you. I just have a quick question about the funding for the security resource officers. And I wanted to see if that, ensure that we've allocated enough to also keep our partnership with the sheriff's office as well, and that it's not a replacement of that.
Yes. It is not a replacement, it's an add. So we will have SROs, as well as our continued partnership with the Sheriff's Office and Baton Rouge Police Department.
Very good. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'll jump in for a second to say we're at the 15-minute mark for the scheduled end of the meeting at 6:30. So I just want to notice the board.
Vice President Collins?
Thank you very much. I just want to raise up a concern. And it's actually just simply echoing board member Ware Jackson. I was about to say Ware Collins. I'm sorry. And that is around equity. And the idea that a standardized cookie cutter approach is the antithesis of equity. And I'm not anti-standardization, but there's a time and place for the standardization. And if we are singing the mantra of equity, 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 then at the very least, when it comes to resources that directly touch students like teachers, then all the more reason for us to make sure the teachers and our staff that are on school sites, then all the more reason for us to, yes, have some guidance about how to approach it, but to say that we've not, as a district, followed the recommendation of the state student to teacher ratio is a reason for that. Lots of things we may or may not get wrong, but if the mantra is equity, then our quote unquote failure to adhere to recommendations by the state about what our student to teacher ratios ought to look like is perhaps intentional and necessary. And so, for example, when schools who already have high performing students, yes, they do need support and they need coaching, but when all principals are given a mandate to have XYZ staff, whether they actually need it for their students or not. And in the meantime, school sites that could probably use a couple of those kind of people are not afforded additional staff along those lines, and I'm speaking in general terms, I don't want to pick on different positions, then that's not going in the direction of equity. So I just want to lift up that concern that I think we still have a very long way to go based on what we have recently put in place. I think we still have a very long way to go in the direction of equity. Some schools, a lot of schools lost guidance counselors, okay? And they need those guidance counselors on some of those campuses because they need to do the work, they need to do additional guidance. And I'm using the term loosely for those students on those campuses. And so I just want to mention that. And I, especially in light of recognizing that we do have finite resources, as the superintendent so eloquently stated. We have finite resources. We can't provide everything for everybody. So all the more reason for us to say, what does this campus or that campus need? And if is vocalized by a campus that they don't need something, and they're willing to admit they don't need something, maybe we can send that to those schools that are struggling. Because again, as I've mentioned before, and I'm gonna be quiet after this, I would love to see 2 teachers in a classroom, even if it's just temporary, to help catch up from COVID learning time loss that we had talked about so much, or just a year of concentrated efforts with 2 teachers in classrooms at our lowest performing schools. We can't do that if we trying to just stick to a strict model. And so just offering those thoughts. And I appreciate you all for hearing me echo my colleagues' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Collins. Board Member Ware Jackson.
One last thing. I don't know how I missed this one because, I've been talking in the email a lot about Montessori, and in this, the expenditure highlights speaks of Montessori program growth in the district, and I'm wondering if someone could expound on where that is, because we've lost some classroom space over at Dufrock, or we've lost some teachers at Dufrock, and we have the same number of classrooms this year as last year. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about the growth of Montessori.
There are additional Montessori paras and teachers in the budget as compared to last year. Now, as far as
Paras
the
and-
growth of that, that would be a Ms. Porter question.
Okay, do you don't know where though, where the parents and teachers are going?
No,
'Cause
ma'am,
we've
I
got
just-
2 Montessori
But we
schools.
can get you that information.
Okay. All right, thanks. I would appreciate it. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
I don't see any more questions in the queue. There are no questions in the queue. Well, we can go ahead and end the meeting. All right, thank you.
Dr. Narcisse and members of the board who showed up and stayed, thank you. And thank you for letting the public come up here again. After hearing all that information, we needed some time to process and to see where you were coming from as board members with all the data and information. I want to address, first of all, the comment about special education from Ms. Lopez, that the programs are not being cut, yet this is a quote from the documents online. School by school staffing to support the special needs children are reflected in these projections. The special education staffing allotment will decrease 51 positions between both the special need and gifted populations, an overall decrease of $1.8 million. So to say you aren't changing the program is confusing or disingenuous. Secondly, sustainability. Some of these ideas are grand. Really, these tutors, i.e. coaches, that's lovely. But again, we have VIPS that comes in and helps children regularly for free, volunteers in public schools that we don't pay. Like Ms. Collins stated, I'd love to see 2 teachers in every elementary classroom helping children who are illiterate and who can't master basic math facts because they're coming from homes where education is not valued or people are struggling to survive around here and they can't thrive. I want you to be careful that when you're asked to give a report that you actually do that. Sometimes I ask my children for something and instead of taking it as an order, they take it as a suggestion. But Dr. Narcisse, month after month, people have been asking you for these sustainability reports and they really should already be available. I'm a little stressed out because school is starting soon, which brings me to another point. Thank you, Ms. Dyson, for standing firm for transportation. As a parent whose children rode the bus for a decade, or I resorted to driving and carpooling and bought a van so I could carry more children, you don't ask parents in this district to opt in. We are an impoverished district. We're a district where people are stressed out and might not have the technology to get on your Facebook ad for EBR schools. Hey, follow the link and opt in. And I'm sorry, they were bragging about having 2,230 parents opt in. We're a district of 42,000 kids. I can't stand this beeping. Okay, I will let someone else speak. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, this is my first time speaking here. So I'm Anna Lee Campbell. I'm an EBR parent. I've met most of you before. Nice to see you. I just wanted to say I took a glean through, and I am one of those lay people as far as when it comes to budgeting and all that stuff, reading all this. And so I did look through the narrative. the narrative and the highlights. The highlights to me was a little confusing because on some of it it said difference and powers of operations and all that stuff. Difference to me is a subtraction. And so at some points they're talking about differences and then they'll say increase. So I wasn't sure when they said difference, if they were increasing or taking away in some of those things. So, and that's in a lot of the highlighted sections. What I did want to point out though, something that you guys talking about the dual enrollment, and I'm so glad to hear somebody asking about the amount, the cost of the credits and that sort of thing. Per that narrative, it says, I don't know what page it was, I didn't do it, but it was EBR guarantees payment. This is regarding ASU. Guarantees payment in full for 700 students. In the event there are less than 700 students enrolled, East Baton Rouge Public School System has the option to repurpose paid funds towards providing an opportunity for students in brick and mortar schools to enroll in virtual courses with ASU instructors or opportunities for professional development services. EBR Schools and ASU agrees to a 3-year contract, 22 to 25, to provide instructional services for the EBR Virtual Academy. So we don't have 700 kids in Virtual Academy right now. And so if you're going to be doing ASU and you're talking about getting a credit for dual enrollment through BRCC or whoever you're using, are you going to be talking about them to get a credit for that sort of stuff to equate all that out? But we don't have 700 students in EBR schools, in the Virtual Academy. And then the last part is regarding the $93.6 million that goes to charter schools. Type 1 charter schools is increased by $16.8 million. Type 1 charters, Basis, Mantera, Basis Mid-City, CSAL, Helix Aviation, Helix Legal, Idea Bridge Academy, Idea University, Ideal University Prep, Idea Innovation will be adding additional grade levels. The appropriation for Title I charter schools line item is projected at $93.6 million. This is from your own draft. And at the very bottom of it, it says, no budget shall be approved where expenditures exceed the expected means of financing. The budget shall be reviewed periodically, and such financial reports as the board directs shall be prepared and presented to the board by the superintendent and his or her designee. So we need to balance the budget.
Thank you. My name is James Finney. There is zero chance that the board will have their questions answered satisfactorily between now and 24 hours from now. It will be irresponsible when the board votes either 8-1 or 7-2 to approve these budgets. That's what we expect. That's what we've grown to become accustomed to. It would be nice if the board actually grows a spine and demands competence from this administration for a change. Thank you.
Well, it is 6:29, so we can take one more comment for 3 minutes, or we can go ahead and end. No further comments. Your workshop's adjourned. Thank you.